In the morning of 3 May 2023, law enforcement officers executed a planned intervention at an industrial unit in Blackburn, Lancashire. Around mid-morning, surveillance had identified a vehicle arriving at the warehouse that matched one seen multiple times in connection with the operation. The lead figure, Chowdhury, was observed driving the car, arriving at the site. When officers forced entry under warrant, the warehouse yielded a substantial seizure, approximately 217 kilograms of cocaine hidden inside blocks of imported Gouda cheese, alongside other packaging materials prepared for onward dispatch. Simultaneously, searches were conducted at Chowdhury's residential property in Blackburn, where significant cash sums and counting materials were discovered. At the same time, intelligence gathered during the operation pointed to Mohabbat, operating from South Shields, as orchestrating the courier network that bridged northern England with mainland Europe. The raid marked the culmination of months of covert investigative work.
In the period leading up to the raid, investigators from the Lancashire Force and partner agencies conducted deep surveillance of the warehouse unit, tracking all traffic in and out, transport vehicles, courier cars, import consignments. Investigators monitored encrypted communications among members of the organization, conducted cash flow tracing, and followed vehicle movement patterns for months. They discovered a consistent pattern: consignments arriving from mainland Europe, notably Belgium and the Netherlands, under the guise of food imports, blocks of Gouda cheese, being delivered to the warehouse hub in Blackburn, offloaded, repackaged, and distributed via courier drivers across northern England. Returns of large sums of cash were traced back via courier routes, often routing money towards South Shields and other collection points. Throughout late 2022 and early 2023, the investigation captured metadata from encrypted messenger apps, vehicle-fit GPS logs, fuel and mileage records, CCTV footage of warehouse arrivals, and bank account linking records for associated properties. The evidence indicated that more than 2,000 kilograms of cocaine had been agreed for supply during this period, with a projected value in excess of £70 million. The scale and organization importing large consignments, concealing them inside legitimate-looking food items, warehousing, courier distribution, and money laundering marked this as a highly advanced enterprise.
Although the enterprise operated without a publicly traded commercial company name, it essentially functioned in a corporate-style logistical framework. The core pieces, the Blackburn warehouse hub, the import and storage operation, the courier network, the cash flow machinery, and the cross-border supply chain from continental Europe. Chowdhury's role was centered on import logistics, storage, repackaging, and domestic UK distribution. Mohabbat's role focused on the courier network and moving proceeds. Under them was a multi-tier structure: import drivers, warehouse handlers, repackagers, regional dispatch drivers, and cash couriers. The modus operandi: shipments of blocks of Gouda cheese arrive from Belgium or Netherlands. Containers or pallets offloaded and diverted to the UK hub. Inside the cheese blocks or alongside them are concealed the cocaine. Once at the warehouse, the product is processed, extracted, weighed, packaged into smaller loads, and then distributed via couriers to regional cells. In parallel, cash proceeds from UK distribution are collected, counted, laundered, and moved back through the network. Although the exact date of inception isn't publicly documented, the sheer scale, 2,000 kilograms plus, implies operational activity for a number of months by mid-2022 and full pace through to the 2023 raid.
The enterprise is estimated to have trafficked in excess of 2,000 kilograms of cocaine, placing the projected value at over £70 million. Such throughput over a period of roughly 8 to 9 months, from late 2022 to early 2023, equates to an average of more than 200 kilograms per month, a figure placing it among the larger UK Class A supply operations in recent years. On the day of the raid alone, approximately 217 kilograms were discovered at the warehouse. The method, importing via Europe, hidden in food imports, cheese blocks, storing in a dedicated UK hub, repackaging and distributing via a courier network, allowed rapid turnover and large volume. For readers, both new and familiar with the case, the takeaway is clear. This was not a few sporadic shipments, but a sustained, high-volume, well-organized trafficking enterprise.
Chaudhry grew up in Blackburn, Lancashire, in a working-class family. As a youth, he was known locally to engage in small-scale transport jobs and had run-ins with the law for minor offences. Over time, he gained experience in the haulage and logistics sector, familiarizing himself with industrial units in the Lancashire area, vehicle networks and driver contacts. By his early 30s, he was operating warehouse assets and managing fleets of drivers locally, building reputation and capacity. That background logistics, warehousing, driver networks laid the foundation for his role in the enterprise, import handling, storage and national distribution logistics.
Mohabbat was raised in South Shields, Tyne and Wear, in a modest local family home. From his teenage years, he showed an inclination toward transport and courier work, informal jobs driving vehicles, moving goods across borders, and coordinating driver networks. He developed contacts in the Northeast and made several trips into continental Europe as a driver or logistics intermediary. By his mid-20s, he had built a small network of drivers and couriers capable of cross-border movement. This background positioned him ideally to manage the courier network and cash flow side of the operation: the drivers, the routes, the movement between Europe and the UK, and the distribution of proceeds. The pairing of Chaudhry's domestic hub infrastructure and Mohabbat's international courier network gave the enterprise both reach and capability. A crucial element in the operation's sophistication was the concealment of cocaine inside imported blocks of Gouda cheese. The organization imported large consignments from Belgium and the Netherlands, countries well known for that style of cheese. The blocks were standard food import cartons, making them seem innocuous. Inside or alongside those blocks, hidden within pallets, lay large quantities of Class A drug. Once the shipment arrived in the UK, it was delivered to the warehouse hub, where the drug was extracted, packaged into smaller loads, or repackaged for onward courier distribution. The use of cheese blocks exploited the commercial food import trade's relative laxity for high-volume cover shipments. For someone unfamiliar with the operation, the vivid image of cocaine within cheese blocks helps underscore the cleverness of the concealment method. The courier network was the operational lifeblood of the enterprise. It functioned on two parallel flows: inbound shipments of drugs from Europe to the UK hub, and outbound distribution and cash return routes within the UK and toward Europe. Under Mohabbat's direction, a cohort of drivers was recruited and deployed. Some drivers collected import consignments in trucks or vans from ports on the continent, Belgium or the Netherlands, under load covers suggesting lawful goods, cheese blocks, food pallets. They entered the UK, transported the loads to the warehouse network in Blackburn. From the warehouse, regional dispatch drivers loaded smaller packages for distribution across northern England. Meanwhile, once the drugs were distributed and sold, cash proceeds were gathered and forwarded back via courier drivers toward collection points. Some cash couriers traveled from distributing regions back to South Shields or other hubs under Mohabbat's control, where the money was counted, laundered, and forwarded for reinvestment. The network had a hub-and-spoke architecture: European supply, Blackburn hub, regional distribution nodes, cash collection hubs, money laundering routes. The existence of drivers operating both across borders and domestically, vehicles flagged for surveillance, and tracked courier movements were central to the police case. For the mixed audience, the takeaway is that this was not a one-off smuggling operation, but a full logistics and courier network capable of large-scale movement of both drugs and money.
The supply side of the enterprise was firmly international. The drugs originated in mainland Europe, specifically from Belgium and the Netherlands, and entered the UK under the guise of food imports. The choice of blocks of Gouda cheese from those countries as the concealment medium is telling. The importation relied on legitimate-looking food goods, enabling large volumes to pass through customs or freight inspection with less suspicion. Once in the UK, the concealed shipments were delivered to the Blackburn warehouse hub where processing occurred: offloading, extraction, packaging, dispatch. The international links meant the enterprise had to manage cross-border transport, import logistics, customs documentation, even if falsified or misdeclared, freight forwarding, and European driver involvement or coordination. Those links increased the complexity of the operation, widened the risk profile, and increased the scale. By involving Europe, the network tapped larger volume supply, lower pricing, higher throughput. For readers new to the case, the key lesson: one of the reasons the operation reached the scale of 2,000 kilograms plus was that it drew on continental Europe's supply routes, not mere domestic UK sourcing. On the morning of the raid, the investigators took Chaudhry into custody at the warehouse site in Blackburn. He was formally charged with conspiracy to supply Class A cocaine and money laundering offenses. The charge sheet detailed his role as the warehousing and distribution logistics operator, linking import consignments, storage, and onward dispatch. In the weeks following the arrest, investigators seized his residential property in Blackburn, finding large cash sums, counting machines, and financial records consistent with money laundering activity. The prosecution's case outlined emails, encrypted messenger logs, driver payment records, and vehicle movement logs tying him to the trafficked volumes. Chaudhry pleaded guilty at the plea hearing stage, acknowledging his role in the conspiracy, although his defense argued mitigating background factors, including his family responsibilities and earlier clean record until the operation. The Crown pursued the money laundering charges aggressively, arguing that the proceeds from the drugs had been funneled into the purchase of vehicles and warehouse assets. The formal indictment set out supply of more than 2,000 kilograms of cocaine and related money laundering, leading to the eventual sentencing.
Mohabbath's arrest came later, on 3 July 2023. Law enforcement at South Shields moved against him at his Dean Road address. Outside his home was parked an Audi vehicle linked by the investigation to courier activity. At the address, officers discovered snap bags of cocaine and evidence of immediate distribution. Simultaneously, a linked property in Jarrow, basement level, was searched where significant cash sums and drug paraphernalia were found. Mohabbath was charged with conspiracy to supply Class A cocaine. While he was not formally charged with money laundering in the initial indictment, the prosecution sought forfeiture orders and asset recovery orders relating to vehicles, cash, and properties. His role was identified as the Courier Network Director, responsible for driver recruitment, route selection, continental imports and domestic dispatch, cash return logistics, and overall coordination between Europe and the UK hub. He pleaded guilty at his hearing, accepting his part in the conspiracy, although his defense emphasized his age 28 and asserted that much of the operational infrastructure had been provided by others. The charges were laid in the same Crown Court list as Chaudhry's, but his sentencing hearing was scheduled separately.
Court proceedings for Chaudhry were conducted at Preston Crown Court in April 2024. The prosecution presented a full disclosure of the network: over 2,000 kilograms of cocaine trafficked, import routes via Europe, concealment in food imports, delivery to the warehouse hub in Blackburn, courier distribution across the UK, and cash flows returned for laundering. In the mitigation stage, Chaudhry's counsel emphasized his cooperation with authorities after arrest, his responsibilities for family dependents, and his previous record, which, although including minor offenses, did not involve large-scale trafficking until this enterprise. The judge deemed the operation one of the most serious Class A supply conspiracies seen in the region, both in volume and organization.
On 12 April 2024, Chaudhry was sentenced to 27 years and 6 months in prison. In addition, the court imposed a confiscation order under the Proceeds of Crime Act, ordering the recovery of specified funds, vehicles, and warehouse assets tied to the operation. The money laundering count added to the severity of the sentence. Chaudhry will serve his sentence in a high-security facility, and his eligibility for parole will be determined according to the statutory minimum term. The forfeiture of assets means that even upon eventual release, his financial recovery obligations persist.
Mahabith's hearing followed shortly after Chaudhry's. At Preston Crown Court, on 15 April 2024, the prosecution laid out the courier network evidence, driver logs, vehicle GPS tracking, import-export movement records, cash flow tracing, and encrypted communications implicating Mahabith in coordinating shipments and dispatch. His defense argued mitigating factors: his younger age, claims of coercion or facilitation by more senior figures, and an early guilty plea. The judge acknowledged the mitigating points, but emphasized the scale of his role, coordinating a network moving large volumes across borders, linking Europe and the UK. The sentence handed to Mahabith was 16 years in prison. In tandem with the custodial term, the court ordered a money laundering confiscation and asset forfeiture order. Vehicles, cash reserves, and properties associated with the network will be recovered. Mahabith begins his sentence immediately. His eligibility for parole will reflect the statutory minimum term under his sentence structure, and the forfeiture orders ensure ongoing financial liability post-custody.
Thank you all for watching. What is your take on this? Let's continue the conversation in the comment section. Be sure to hit like, subscribe, and click the notification bell so you won't miss future content.